Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse and video game news. Today is Wednesday, January 30th. Got a surprising number of views last time. I don't know why. Um, it's like, didn't really lead to any subscriptions, but uh, certainly it seemed like that may just be a timing issue more than anything else. Like whenever you decide to start streaming, if you're 1 minute over a different point, you might get way more views. I think it is so random that it really is kind of ridiculous. Uh, and for me, saying I got a lot of views is to say I got like 25 views in a relatively short amount of time on the live stream. There is a real argument that for as much as YouTube promoted and pushed people to live stream, the truth of the matter is it did not benefit most people. In the same way, I would say the exact same thing for like premiering videos. That hasn't really led to any change in habit of the viewership of on YouTube. Not anything I've felt, at least. So what do we need? Still, I guess Dragoncraft and Portalcraft is what we need to get. Let's go into the shop. For the accountability section today, my insomnia is still changing things up on me, so I haven't made great progress. In all fairness, also, playing Portal, not Portal, I haven't played Portal in a while, playing Fear 2 creates a scenario where I just don't want to play 2 or 3 levels in a row. That they are 40 to an hour long, 40 minutes to 60-minute long levels, and they aren't very particularly enthralling levels where you would want to actually play multiple levels in a row. It's the same old in every single level. You get a little bit of fighting, armor cam security, you get a little bit of fighting replicant soldiers, and you get a little bit of jump scares and horror things. Like, I just made it through the school part of Fear 2, and a couple of things that are stand out about that in the fact that you never see the young Alma, the girl Alma, little girl Alma, in the school section, where it seems like she would be more a candidate to show up, but you see the older naked Alma quite a lot, which I don't know if maybe that was supposed to be a negative inference. You were supposed to realize that you hadn't seen the young Alma in a while, and that maybe her innocence had disappeared or vanished. You do see it indicated that Alma was a creepy girl even before she was a creepy grudge Japanese looking girl, even before she became psychic. Alright, so I guess we just have to pick, do we want to do Dragoncraft versus Dragoncraft versus Dragoncraft? Let's just do this one, I guess. Well, wouldn't this one be newer if it has a 2 behind it? Who even knows? We've got some different backgrounds here, and it feels like even the chest rewards are different. It kind of feels like all this art is different. Interesting. Why would you waste your time redrawing this art? But yeah, not a lot happening with Beer 2. I'm just trying to burn through it as quickly as possible and move on with my life. There's on top of that, not really a ton happening. I'm taking long breaks. I watched like Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman of the DC movies is the original Woman movie. It's probably the best movie. I think a big problem with a lot of the DC movies in particular is that it is it's the outfits, and by setting Wonder Woman's outfit and costume as the way it looks both at the beginning of her journey as a hero in the first movie and pretty much look exactly the same way in the near end of her movie in the Justice League movie, which I watched that and that was just garbage. They don't leave themselves in much of a place to give her different outfits unless they're just going to start having Elseworlds or alternate realities of some sort. So yeah, that doesn't that wasn't a smart move. There's a lot of things in Wonder Woman that show that they're kind of a bad move, and I think from what I've heard as far as reviews of Wonder Woman 84, the sequel to Wonder Woman, is that once you start getting the actress who's like Israeli and frankly I don't think much of an actress, and not at least not an English actress. She may be a very good Israeli actress and she may speak very well there, but I think in casting her specifically because of her beauty, they've gone for looks over long-term acting ability, which doesn't work for a series that wants to run for a long time. And that combined with just, I think, bad planning and bad... One second, I'm gonna mute myself. Yeah, I think just bad directing on this part, and yes, I know this has nothing to do with video games, but they went to make an action movie in Wonder Woman, and they did a great job making an action movie, but they failed to give her a good hero's journey. They failed to give her the right motivations and the right reasons to feel the way she would feel, particularly near the end. Wonder Woman is very much a World War I movie more than anything else, too. So, you could have fairly easily had Wonder Woman occur in the exact same way, except for you just eliminate Ares and Wonder Woman, and then just have Steve Trevor go through the events of the rest of the movie. I don't think that they did a great job setting up any supporting characters by setting it up in the past. That's also a mistake. Like, you get Steve Trevor and his band of friends in Wonder Woman 1, and then you're pretty much guaranteed that you're not going to see any of those characters ever again. So any time invested in any of the characters in the first movie is wasted in the sequel. Would be wasted in the sequel. They really are just putting an entire series on the shoulders of one character, whereas Iron Man had Pepper Potts in all his movies. Batman always has like Jarvis, his butler. Is his name Jarvis? I don't even remember at the moment. Or Commissioner Gordon is in almost every Batman movie, on top of a cast of rogues that are fairly consistent and recognizable on their own, which Wonder Woman doesn't really have that as far as enemies. There's arguably a mistake in that the Wonder Woman movie focuses on Wonder Woman's childhood and training, and then the second movie doubles down on that, and that's one of the major complaints I've heard about the second movie, not having seen it myself, that the first 15 minutes is showing Wonder Woman as a child, a slightly older child than the way she's shown in the first movie, but still pretty much training and living on Themyscira, where there definitely was a narrative arc that you could have had where nobody would have believed that Wonder Woman was anything other than crazy had she simply shown up and been accompanying Steve Trevor back to London, and that was the start of the movie. She could certainly have a lot of conversation, or they could have started when they were on the boat back to London from Themyscira, and Steve Trevor could have had his mind erased if there's a logical reason in comic book wise why that might happen, or something along that lines. And then at least for all the characters in the main story, without really the viewers, anyone watching the movie would almost still assume that Wonder Woman was still Wonder Woman, and you probably don't want a twist where she actually was crazy and then Zeus's power comes down and turns her into Wonder Woman, and it gives her a new origin. Although, for the cinematic universe, that might be a good idea. Is just subvert everyone's expectations. Show a Batman movie in a new DC cinematic universe where Batman's family are there and with him this whole time, and then he gets a different reason to be the Batman. Redoing what has already been done in the comics over and over again is not the right move, because you're just repeating the same mistakes that DC and Marvel have been doing. I think DC in particular has been doing for a long time. I was watching a YouTube video, and someone described it as compounded disinterest, in the sense that every time there's a reboot, it just gets faster and faster until at a faster rate people stop buying that new reboot. Like issue 1 always sells pretty good because there's a whole bunch of comic book speculators that think that the comics issue 1 comics will be worth something, and then by the time you're at issue 2 or 3, you've lost 50-60% of your followership, of your purchases and sales on a comic. Did I watch any other movies other than Wonder Woman? I don't think so. Yeah. So I've been definitely taking little breaks here and there between playing Fear 2 to catch up on the Marvel and DC movies, because it's been probably a decade or approaching a decade where I've just checked out, and it'll probably be another decade before I catch up again. Particularly the Marvel, everything after Endgame is gonna, I think, try to be more magical and focus more on Doctor Strange and maybe even Doctor Fate, and WandaVision certainly points out that as a Disney TV series. And so that's definitely going to be a different experience for the people who have been watching the Marvel movies up until that point. And I don't know if people are really willing to go on that journey, or if people are just going to watch 1 or 2 movies after Endgame and go, okay, I'm done. I'm out. This is different. We don't have Iron Man anymore. We're not seeing Captain America. We're not seeing the big names that probably needed to stay around. They're also kind of failing to do a great job to replace Captain America and Iron Man. Let's see what this one does. Reduces damage to 0.
When a thing breaks, another takes its place.
Serves me right.
My dragon and I are one.
Okay, well, I guess that's pretty much all we can say for the accountability section. I desperately still need to schedule some videos, but also I'm still need to finish the Halloween videos. The big news for today, from that setup and warm up. Yeah, I really do feel like the accountability section at the beginning of my streams, while they probably are terrible for YouTube because I'm not just jumping into the point immediately, it is kind of the pre-show warm-up that I probably need. At a certain point, maybe I should have a full break and actually start the show like after the accountability section, but yeah, that would be more work, and that would be editing, and that's the stuff I don't want to do. To the detriment of my own channel, I know, but I've also, I want to mention this, I've somehow bitten into a tortilla chip and cut up the roof of my mouth again, to the point where I think my tortilla chips are a little stale, and that is irritating the heck out of me. So last stream, the Disney came out and said that they're basically labeling all of their Lucasfilm and LucasArts games under the branding of LucasArts instead of Lucasfilms or Lucas Entertainment. It doesn't seem like there's any real indication there that means they're going to even license a lot more games. But the follow-up to that announcement is that Machine Gun Games, the makers of the Wolfenstein reboot, which they still owe us a Wolfenstein 3 to finish that story, but I think it is also worth mentioning that in the Wolfenstein series they did have Youngbloods come out most recently, and that was not super well received. Regardless, they've announced they are going to make an Indiana Jones game. Now, there's a lot of problems that I think people will overlook because of the hype of an Indiana Jones game being announced. The obvious problem that most people won't overlook is the fact that Lara Croft and Uncharted have been stealing the general gameplay mechanics and concepts from Indiana Jones for decades now. So an Indiana Jones game that feels like a Tomb Raider game, either the reboot or the old games, or an Uncharted game, is going to more than likely feel one note and not good. Yeah, I'm sure there was a better, more descriptive way to say that, but yeah, it's just, in my opinion, not gonna work. You could try something like a God of War reboot type game, where it is much more linear, but even in God of War there was a lot of like just straight up fighting, which then comes to the next issue is you do have Indiana Jones shoot people, but he's more known for using his whip, just in the subconscious of people, but you can't really do too much with a whip. The closest game we've seen that was even slightly good at at having a whip in it was City of Brass, and that didn't go really anywhere. My own heart tells me, if you look at history, the only well-liked, well-remembered Indiana Jones games are point-and-click adventures. Does it make sense that machine gun games would make a point-and-click adventure? Maybe. Like, it's highly unlikely, but maybe they do want something different, and so they are looking to try something different from just a 3D first-person shooter game. Otherwise, this may just be a cheap cop-out. The way the announcement was describing it doesn't seem to guarantee that it's going to be tied into the next Indiana Jones movie that they want to make, and this might be an indication that they are secretly abandoning making that next Indiana Jones movie that was announced like really only 3 or 4 months ago. With the pandemic and everything, I could see that maybe the story that Steven Spielberg had already kind of outlined is now just sitting, not being used, and so they sold it to a game company to do it. The question, I guess, is can you make a new type of game that's much like a point-and-click adventure game, but with really, really great graphics at a certain level? Then what you're asking is, can you make something like a Telltale game? And I guess the answer to that is yes. That would work. So yeah, that may be the case, that maybe they're doing a Telltale project. Otherwise they're doing a something that feels like, the cynical assumption to make here would be that it is literally just going to be Wolfenstein, but the parts of Wolfenstein that they skipped over in the Wolfenstein reboot. So it's just going to be Indiana Jones running around a castle-like area, in different levels, and shooting Nazis with period matching guns, and no future tech. Like Wolfenstein has all of the magic and the future tech element on that. And if it is just a lazy, basically a skin to the Wolfenstein reboots, then that I don't think is going to satisfy too many people. There is kind of a problem where Indiana Jones as an actual character has to be written particularly well and played particularly well by Harrison Ford, who is another issue, certainly, where he's gonna more than likely phone it in for a video game even more than he phones it in for movies these days. So yeah, I don't know if you don't end up making him come off as a complete and total jerk, because Indiana Jones as a movie series in particular is more in the minds of the audience than it is in the minds of the actual movie and dialogue. I mentioned something that I had been realized or not realized. Somebody had just directly told me this, is that if you go back and watch the bar scene where Indiana Jones meets Marion for the first time in Ark of the Covenant, she literally like says directly that he slept with her when he was her professor and she was like 16 years old, and he would have been like 25, 28, like pretty old at that time. And so, and Indiana Jones does often come off as a jerk, and we just kind of turn a blind eye on it. So, like, what would have been a lovable scoundrel in the old days now is cancelable effects. Like, I think he also takes the woman hostage in Temple of Doom at the beginning of that movie. So they take us, they make a special effort to make him the bad guy in the first two movies. Now, set it after The Last Crusade, maybe, or even after the ending of Temple of Doom, and maybe you can say he had character growth. Maybe you can then have him be a nicer person that way. But you got to be real careful with Indiana Jones. You only have to look at Mutt in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull to see that, when as new writers are basically trying to just write a new character who's supposed to be exactly the same as the old character, and then they're failing at that pretty spectacularly. So yeah, I think point and click adventure with massive graphics improvement might be the way. Find something that is a little bit more traditional than the Telltale game, so you're not just choosing dialogue choices. I think particularly in an Indiana Jones game, having dialogue choices that all sound like Indiana Jones would be really, really hard to write. So that's probably not what you want to do. Original point and click adventures were built around the idea that all the dialogue had already been written by somebody who knew what they were doing. Where the Telltale dialogue was kind of written. Sometimes it was written by somebody who was good. Sometimes it was written by someone who wasn't so good. I don't think any of the Walking Dead games had terrible dialogue, but they definitely were different. And even that first season of The Walking Dead, the characters were written very, very differently from episode to episode. And the concept of having episodic different writers really came back to bite them in the butt. The bigger part of that announcement also would be this wasn't even listed as a game that is going to be written by Steven Spielberg or produced by Steven Spielberg. So you have the creator of the Indiana Jones series not really even committing to the important thing that they would need to commit to, is to at least have a producer credit, at least have their name on the project. And that is something that should be slightly concerning. Well, is there any other news? I've seen that Open Critic is trying to make a podcast, which I guess that is the way things go, is that there are pretty much any YouTube channel or any article-based video game review site is eventually getting forced to embrace podcast in some small amount. And then the Giant Bomb bombcast happened, and I'm fairly certain if you went back and listened to all my previous live streams, I mentioned this. Ben has been kind of missing since they stopped the after shows with him, and that was an indication that Ben, who is on the bombcast at Giant Bomb, is leaving. And yeah, he finally announced that he's leaving after Game of the Year. It's not a big prediction, frankly. Like almost every other year, there's at least one person who leaves. There was this big acquisition, and certainly that probably got a lot of people thinking, if not forced some people to quit, even though Ben claims that it had nothing to do with the acquisition. If anything, there was indication that some people may literally get fired during the acquisition also, from the boss. But yeah, it does seem like he either got another offer, or he just was not, or has just somehow become independently wealthy. So yeah, he's.
It won't be long now.
There was also some indicators you certainly could see that in the fact that he was, for several weeks now, he's been playing with OBS to make his face fairly small on the video part of that. I wouldn't be super surprised if he's actually transitioning, and that might sound crazy, but Ben also constantly would refer to his partner as his partner, implying, and never as a boyfriend or girlfriend, implying that whoever he was with was non-binary at best. And so yeah, hiding and shrinking your face down during the live screen might have been a element to hide that his face was getting maybe a little bit more bloated, although I didn't really see any of that, so this is pure speculation. But yeah, Ben's gone, which doesn't really matter. Frankly, none of the people on Giant Bomb anymore matter much as far as video game coverage, because nobody out there is really an expert on anything. Ben came out directly and admitted that he was just an intern who had his house burned down, and they hired him and took a big risk, and he's been kind of not doing much. He had an after show talking about anime, and the anime stuff is pretty much not going anywhere for Giant Bomb. It's just not going to work ever. You can't have a video game site transition to an anime site. They already had an anime site when they were with Whiskey Media, and shut that down fairly quickly. But yeah, he didn't have any real expertise on any games, and he's just doing the same thing that every other mainstream video game journalist does, is just talking about the same 5 games. Ben definitely was kind of an SJW, but he wasn't as terrible as some of the previous Giant Bomb people who have come and gone. But just because he wasn't as vocal about it. So that for 2020, that's both Abby, the female producer who knew nothing about games, and Ben, the intern who got hired, who didn't know much about games, are gone. There's easily 2 other people that show up on the Giant Bomb West, the Giant Bombcast podcast, that I think could leave. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 of them left, because particularly if you watch the Bombcast on YouTube and you see the video, there are just 2 people always in every single conversation that are saying absolutely nothing, and they're just sitting there and looking bored, because the Bombcast really is just a meeting for them. It's just their weekly meeting. And yeah, in all fairness, a couple of them are just producers, and they're not really supposed to be playing much video games. But they've, at this point, pretty much run out of people who are supposed to be the critics. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get shut down, not this year, but next year, with them being acquired. But it also very well may just be a case that it just constantly stays alive in some form or factor. Because that seems to be the way this a lot of these things go, is that once you've created some sort of name for yourself, there you are forever in existence. It would be very weird to like shut down the forums on Giant Bomb without, but any forum anywhere might get shut down for any number of reasons at this point. But shut down the Wikipedia. Like you really only have to look at like Comic Vine, where I think maybe there's one employee that still runs Comic Vine, and that's it. Unless there's been some changes there. Otherwise, Comic Vine, I think, is still owned by CBS, and their Wikipedia style information, I think, still exists. And that really is a site where it's so community run that they've got people working for free to maintain the information, and all CBS has to do is put ads on it to make a small amount of profit without really investing any more into it. Let's go and hit that. Play that. Hit that. And in the turn, I guess. But that also, it is also worth mentioning, as I'm kind of just rambling here, that because Giant Bomb is so unimportant at this point as far as being a mainstream video game news source to me, I'm just really pointing out that there is a decent level of collapsing that's happening in the video game journalism world. And I think that's has a lot to do with just the failures of them too. And then deal 2 damage to this one. Alright. Do I really need to do that?
I shine. Mortals are adorable.
Stay safe, my sovereign.
It's certainly not the case that we want all mainstream video game journalism to go away. We just want it to be better. It doesn't help anything if we're in a society or world where nobody reviews video games in any big way. Nobody tries to do anything big or bold. You only have to look at like PewDiePie's content and how he covers games to say even that's fairly low effort, and you wouldn't want that to become the only way things are done.
It won't be long now.
Yeah, I'm gonna lose. Which is no difference. Like PewDiePie is kind of a great example of somebody who theoretically should be at the top of a independent game journalism place, although in all fairness he kind of just plays games, he doesn't actually review them. The next closest people I could think are somebody like Extra Credits, which have problems themselves, or the British guy that's still alive, maybe. I don't even know. Like Jacksepticeye. Definitely there's a lot of Let's Players out there, but there aren't big successful critics even to mention it. 30 gold for 0 losses. That seems pathetic and also earned. Well, let's get at least one Forest Craft victory. But yeah, you would think that PewDiePie could put more money and time into the polish of his videos, but he's almost made it specifically not so polished because he doesn't want to go, because he doesn't want to lose his style.
Time for me to prove myself.
And I guess at a certain level, this is where G4 comes back into it, and it hadn't occurred to me until I just said it out loud. We might see Ben at G4. We might see a lot of people go over to G4. And I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing or what. I don't know if G4, with a production company behind it, is going to actually be able to maintain some level of quality. In a funny way, it would almost be preferable, in my mind, if all mainstream video game journalists kind of disappeared and got replaced with G4. Get rid of Polygon, get rid of Kotaku, get rid of PC Gamer, and just make it G4. But if G4 just is as terrible as Kotaku and Polygon and all of those sites have been, then it doesn't matter at all, and that just sullies the memory of G4, which we really liked that. And G4 is kind of liked and beloved by me because of its low budget craziness and willingness to do crazy things and be funny and not get super serious about things. Although there is also a split there between Attack of the Show and them being just funny and silly, and X-Play, where X-Play was very much trying to be somewhat serious while still having a style to it and still being fun. And I think you have to strike that balance fairly carefully and probably make a lot more shows. Anyways, let's start covering the news. We have a game called Great Exploration: New Colony Beyond Viking Raiders, which looks like it is a combination of Vikings and medieval asset flips. It's a VR first-person casual action game. I feel like if you're going to tag something as casual, you shouldn't be able to tag it as action also. This is $2.99 for a VR game. That is incredibly cheap. Bunch of languages. Yeah, and that really goes to tell me that this can't be that good of a game. No way. Not with that price tag on a VR game. Next, we have a game on Steam called Bird, which is obviously yet another game where you play as a bird flying around. $1.19, English only. Pretty much any game like that now is just going to immediately have to be rejected because there's so many clones of that game and none of them are offering enough to make an interesting experience happen.
May the forest be at peace. Stay away, you wouldn't.
Next, we have a game called Adapted Adventures Crystal Cave. There was a game originally called Crystal Cave many years ago, a completely different game than this. This is a odd visual novel in my opinion because you have this guy who, let's say he's supposed to be an adult. He looks like a teenager at most. And then you have this lady who definitely feels like she's supposed to be an adult too. And then you have this kid. It's like there's a whole head height difference here between her and her. So unless she's like 6.5 feet tall and she's 5 feet even, you're going very, very short. And then you have this kid who's a whole head height shorter than her. And then this kid, it's all over the place on the height charts. Visual novels just don't really work that way. They don't work well when the characters are of such extremely differing heights. It's a free game, so I guess that's fine. Short visual novel, probably a kinetic visual novel with no branching terms, and English only, no voice acting. So I guess check this out if you're interested, but I don't even know what the reason would exist to have a game like this. This is the only game they've even put out on Steam. They're calling it the first adventure in the Neo Crystal world, which I guess they are hoping very much that there will be more later.
Help me, fairies. I'm gonna rest for a bit.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Food Stranding, which looks like it is a badly animated side-scrolling shooter game, Contra style game. $1.79 English only. Nothing there. I imagine we are still going to be in a situation. This person is just not playing, which, fair enough. I am more than happy to win just by somebody stalling. And that doesn't work in Shadowverse anyways. Trust me, I would love if it did, but it like concedes you or ends your turn fairly quickly the more and more you don't play. So you can't just walk away from a game and convince people to get bored and concede for easy victories like you can in Hearthstone. And to some extent, you can also do that in Magic the Gathering. Although it seems like maybe Magic the Gathering monitors games a little bit more and will potentially ban you if you try something like that. They'll probably potentially ban you for anything in Magic the Gathering if my experience is anything normal. Here we have a game on Steam called Amusmos, which seems to be a collection of several old school looking games that you might have gotten on Windows 3.1, but they really are just modern games. Modernly programmed games designed to look like old games. $9.99. An amusement operating system.
Let's play. Time to dance. You wouldn't.
Even if this was a real operating system based on like DOS, not MS-DOS, but just some open source version of DOS, that's really more just a programming experiment than something that you really would want or want to see. Even as someone who has an interest in programming, me looking at somebody making an operating system that looks like Windows 3.1 is kind of ridiculous. It would make a lot more sense to just fork Debian or Ubuntu, probably Ubuntu, straight up, just fork that and have a gaming focused version of Linux and put your own custom games in that version of Linux. I'm fairly certain somebody probably has already done that, if not multiple people. But by using the technology of Linux that's been iterated upon and improved upon for years, you are going to have a much better looking experience. And frankly, you could probably theme Ubuntu to look like Windows 3.1 if you wanted, and still have a better experience than trying to program it yourself, which that's what that looked like. Next, we have a game on Steam called Saturn Quest Blast Effect, which is a shoot 'em up game that seems to have a bit of body horror imagery in it and some monsters. Particularly, there's a big blue naked lady that I saw in this naked lady monster that I saw in this trailer. It's $3.59. It's just a shoot 'em up game though. It's English only, so I have no interest there.
Let's play.
Okay, let's go ahead and evolve this,
Done for. So sparkly.
and then
Time to dance.
hit this
Mission failure.
and do this.
Let's play.
I shouldn't have evolved this. I should have evolved one of these. Next, we have a game called Wrath the Beginning, spelled R-A-T-H-E, which I assume is supposed to be pronounced Wrath. It doesn't look like it actually is made with RPG Maker, unless they just redid all the graphics and still use the RPG Maker engine, which is a possibility, but it also does not look good. $21.99, English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Next, we have a game on Steam called Physic, F-I-Z-I-K, which looks like it's an infinite parkour runner with neon graphics in VR. Something like this might sell if some YouTuber that's famous starts playing it, but as an actual game, it's kind of nothing. $5.39. English full audio, no VR support. Interesting. It just kind of looks like it's VR because of the hands on the screen. But once again, not making it to the follow list. Next, we have a game on Steam called Singing Iris, which looks like it is a visual novel, but it's being tagged as an RPG adventure game with gore and nudity. English is not supported, $4.49, Chinese full audio only. Well, it's strange that they translate it to English when it's Chinese everything else in the title. But I will say, for a Chinese game, even though we're not seeing any gameplay being depicted here, at least the screenshots are showing people, whereas very often the screenshots are just big black empty backgrounds, and even in this case you're showing a dog. There are some weird Dutch angles here where the camera is tilted, which you don't see that in visual novels ever, and probably for a very good reason. But yeah, there's definitely not a lot of promise here that the novel part of it is particularly good, because if the novel part was good, they would have talked about it or shown it.
Need a break.
Okay. Let's do this,
Flock to me.
and then I'm short. I had hoped I would have had one more energy pellet, but I didn't. Next, we have a game on Steam called Cave Confectioner, which looks like it's a caveman running around kind of gathering fruits and vegetables. Yeah, it doesn't seem like much of a game. It's like a badly animated survival game. Early access 269 English only. Even the achievements are badly animated. This one game is taking forever. But I guess if it moves slow, that means I can burn through the news faster. Here we have a game on Steam called Town of Dead Life. And then some Asian lettering. This looks like a mobile management game with some top-down twin-stick shooting in an arena. Maybe something closer to even a tower defense in an arena without the tower. English is not supported, 599, 527, simplified and traditional Chinese. Yeah, nothing there looks super interesting. We would be downright bored at this point if we didn't have so many Chinese games trying to flood the Steam market. And it definitely feels like we are. It's kind of hard to deny that a lot of the low effort games that seemed like they were English made games or Western made games have disappeared at the exact same time we've started to see. Why did I get a challenge ticket?
I did it! I won!
Oh, I got a challenge ticket because I moved up the ladder there on the battle pass. Okay, Portalcraft now. It's just all Portalcraft all day, for as bad as that's gonna be. But yeah, I can't help but think that at least a percentage of the low effort asset flip games that pretended to be English games made by English Western companies were actually Chinese games made by Chinese companies, which makes sense. I mean, every other product in the West is often actually assembled or made in China. So why not digital products also? Moving on, we have a game called March in Forest. This is a Japanese game because we know because we've seen dozens of announcements talking about this game. And this really is just an announcement for an announcement for another announcement because it's not out until the 28th or the 27th. Take your pick. It says 28th year, it says 27th year. This one's English, Chinese, Japanese with full audio in Korean. I can put this on the follow list because I've been following it. It is kind of an adventure RPG game where you play as a chibi cat girl or just a short moe cat girl. I don't know how you'd even describe it nowadays. It'll be a game that ideally we'll see actual reviews for, and ideally we'll be able to figure out if it's being targeted towards younger kids or not, because that will in part change my opinion of it, because I would assume it's going to be a fairly generic RPG, but a generic simple RPG by Japanese standards might just be perfect for somebody getting into RPG gaming in the West. That's why Ni no Kuni is still probably a great suggestion to anybody who wants to play in a JRPG or get into playing JRPGs. Let's see.
Magic guns can be kind of finicky.
How dare you! How dare you!
Gamatsu has an article here. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin has no plans for DLC, but the developer hopes to create a sequel, which that's good because that indicates to me that there's a complete story in the main game, and if the main game works fairly well, then people will there will be. I don't know why that guy conceded, but I'll take it.
Seems to be over.
Yeah, if it's good and it gets a sequel, then it's definitely more playable than if it's just mediocre and has a bunch of DLC, or it's an incomplete experience and has a bunch of DLC. Because that's kind of what DLC often feels like, is that, oh, they're going to withhold some part of the ending of the main story so that they can have DLC. There's a game that was released on Xbox called The Pillar Puzzle Escape. So it's looked slightly interesting. The problem, of course, with any of these games is when they get announced that they're being listed on for Xbox Series X, then you have to jump through hoops and do a search to figure out if you can play it somewhere else. And yeah, this game is not on PC. When going to their website, it looks a lot like The Witness, so it may very well just be that it's a Witness clone, but it doesn't look terrible either. Yeah, it definitely feels like a Witness clone. And we had seen a Witness clone listed on Steam, or coming out to Steam, but I don't think it was this game, because they would have listed PC. And at a certain level, if you're putting it on the Switch and the PS4 and the Xbox One, then there really is no reason for it not to be. We may get several free victories here, and I will take them.
Seems to be over.
That will make for an easy stream today if we've got all the daily quests done. Although, we may reset. Probably not. At this point, I probably have just missed some daily rewards. Yeah, and maybe it will come to PC since it's now coming out for the Series X and Series S. There was rumors of a new model of the Series X already coming out. If that was the case, I feel like they must have recognized something wrong with their design that nobody else has recognized. Or they're making just small changes. And if they are just making small changes, it probably won't matter. There's also pretty much confirmation at this point that there's going to be a Switch Pro coming out. But I wouldn't personally feel like you'd made a mistake if you bought the original Switch or the new Switch model or the Switch Pro. Like, any of them are good. Frankly, getting the original Switch is probably great if you ever want to hack it. The new Switch is probably going to, if you want a little bit better battery life and less likelihood of Joy-Con drift. And a Switch Pro, one would hope at that point would have modified the Joy-Cons so that there was less drift completely. I wouldn't be surprised if, frankly, a lot of the drift problems in the Joy-Cons are just software based. Like, there's just not enough of a dead zone, or the sensors in there don't give you enough range of movement. Like, it could be that if they just put a different component on it, it would be able to read a higher number range between, like, let's say the Joy-Cons are going from 0 to 255, just an 8-bit integer, and the drift part of it brings it somewhere between 0 and 60. Well, if you fix the programming to ignore any inputs below 60 as just being 0, that's just having a digital dead zone. That's easy to do, but then you lose a decent number of your range there. So putting in something that goes from zero, not from 0 to 255, but to 0 to, let's go 16-bit, which would be 32,565, I believe, as a 16-bit integer. That's way more levels of input and way more precision. And all of that is the digital version of that. And the actual electronics of it would be, is it 0 volts to 5 volts, or is it a 0 volts to 3 volts, or 3.3 volts, and to how many decibels can you measure the voltage there. So you may just need a digital to analog converter that's better than a reading the circuitry.
Gotcha.
But if it was something that simple, you would have thought that they would have fixed it already. Moving on, Gametsu has the Famitsu review scores for this week, which once again, not a lot of games coming out. So we have Samurai Jack Battle Through Time getting 32 out of 40, which is about average. And then something called Shing, S-H-I-N-G apostrophe, for the PS4 and Switch, it's 29 out of 40, which that is not much of an article at this point. I think Gametsu is rushing to get the new review scores out very fast these days, and then they come back and there are more reviews later. I don't know if these are secondary, less interesting games that get added, or if there is like a Famitsu supplemental that gets published, or maybe there's a Famitsu online reviews that come out. Next we have a game on Steam called Labyrinth 3. This is clearly just a Labyrinth game. 59 cents, English only, 100 achievements with numbers on them. Clearly it's an achievement game. There seems to be zero reason why you would want an achievement game these days, as achievements being highlighted on Steam has not been a thing for a very, very long time, if ever. Next we have a game on Steam called Pour There, which looks like it is a physics game. It feels like it's a mobile game that's been ported. Doesn't look particularly interesting. It's tagged as a hidden object game, and it definitely isn't that. $5.99, bunch of languages, claiming full audio in all those languages. Nothing there. I suppose it is very possible that it has always been a case that achievements and badges and trading cards never really mattered in Steam. That almost certainly is the case, and I was just caught up in it because I was just being stupid. And maybe there is always just a new generation of people that are potentially being dumb on Steam and going crazy about owning and playing games for achievements and getting trading cards and getting badges. Sorry, we can't stay completely apolitical. This is video game news. We have a Gamma Sutra article here. The Entertainment Software Association has suspended political contributions after the assault on the U.S. Capitol. This seems like a kind of just picking your moment to save yourself some money. Their phrasing this, Gamma Sutra, is that the reason they're doing that is because several Republicans supported by a political action committee voted to overturn the November presidential elections. Given the events and actions that led to the violence in the Capitol, we're pausing contributions from the ESA Political Action Committee as we reflect on the tragedy and our path forward. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, frankly. It's like, we're gonna stop lobbying because reasons is all it kind of boils down to. Let's just cut the bull here for a second. This has nothing to do with the assault on the Capitol, really. It has to do with the fact that the ESA only makes money when they run E3. E3 was canceled because of the pandemic. They are broke. That's the truth of it. Plus, let's be honest, the ESA has done not had a great amount of success in convincing politicians who don't play video games to not crack down on video games, particularly since there is real concern from citizens and the government around microtransactions and things like that.
Now the fight begins. Renounce thy plane.
So, yeah, they don't have money. They haven't been successful in a long time. That it's no big surprise that they would just want to find a reason to stop basically bribing politicians, like all political action committees do. Does this mean that the government's going to crack down on video games? Maybe they always were. Like, at the moment, I think the U.S. government has a lot more on their plate than getting petty revenge on political action committees that are going to withhold funding. It's not election season, so nobody is running at the moment. So by the time we start to get to the level where people are going to need or politicians are going to want money to get themselves reelected, I imagine the ESA will be back to supporting, to giving donations, and they can save some money until then. Unless the ESA just kind of shuts down completely, which it almost certainly would never do that. It could certainly shrink down in size to a nothing organization, but if the ESA went away completely, then you don't have the ESRB and the rating system. You don't have E3 in any form factor. The ESA, as a parent company of E3, has been hemorrhaging money for many years around E3 anyways. So it's not a big surprise that they would seem like they were short on money. There has been, to my knowledge, I've been following the news somewhat, but I'm trying not to let it drive me crazy and watch it 24/7 or anything. There's been no other political action groups, action committees, super PACs, none other at all that have withheld funding due to the certification of the electors, or the objection to the certification of the electors, or the assault on the Capitol. If anything, it comes out as downright unpatriotic to say, oh, I'm going to kick you while you're down and not fund the politicians. But at a certain point, that would probably only occur in the minds of politicians themselves, because it's not really patriotic in the first place to have political action committees that are just legally bribing politicians anyways. It would be for an average Joe citizen, a very nice thing if all political action committees disappeared and stopped donating to politicians. And every politician had to build all of their support for elections through like individual donations, small donations, like the Bernie Sanders group did. Although I think even if all politicians did raise their funding through small donations, they still probably would have political action groups that had their ear, and they still would probably listen to super PACs more than super PACs that weren't even funding them, more than they would an average citizen. Of course, that is the inherent problem of the U.S. capitalist system, is that business and politics are inherently corrupted and inherently scratching each other's back. Moving on, TechCrafter has an article, upcoming PlayStation 5 game release dates revealed by Sony at CES, which I think we had already covered this. There's a game called Kena. Let's see. Kena's release date is somewhere in March of 21. Previous announcements targeted quarter 1 of 2021. Most recently, Kana Bridge of Spirits has been mired in a controversy over allegations brought forth by one of its developers. Let's read that. Solar Ash is June 2021. Little Devil Inside was a Kickstarter game that's coming out in July 2021. Ghostwire Tokyo will be October 2021. Stray is October 2021. Project Athia is January 2022. Pragmata is sometime in 2023. Yeah, we talked about all of these games, but I would have much preferred to know more about all these games too, because there is definitely a lot of those that I don't recognize. Here's that article. Controversy looms over Kena Bridge of Spirits as former lead designer speaks out. He claimed he was forced out from Ember Lab after having created 95% of the game's code, a claim which has been refuted by Ember Lab. That's hard to prove one way or the other. Like, the truth is, you could easily create the foundation of a game and 95% of the game's code, and then all they would have to do is add one comment somewhere or one line of code, and then you're down to 94%. And it certainly could feel like you had done way more to create a game than what other people think. Inherently, that I guess is the problem of a lot of collaborative efforts, but specifically when you're programming a game, it is hard to have that argument, and it is kind of a pointless argument that should never be had in the first place. Like, an artist is going to think their art is the part that's selling a game. The sound designer is going to think their sound is contributing severely to the success of a game. The programmer is going to say that none of it works without their programming. And at a certain point, because it's a collaborative effort, they're all right. And if there's trouble in paradise, I don't know if I really needed to do that. I could have attacked with one of these two easily. Yeah, that would have been smarter. Like, if there's trouble in paradise before the game is even released, then that argues that the game is not going to be... final product is unlikely to be that successful. in part, this is why you never let yourself get forced out on a project. You have lawsuits, you have credits, you make sure you get paid. A lot of this gameplay is fairly similar gameplay. It kind of feels like what the combo system here that we see attacking is kind of feels like the staff attacking in that Star Fox game, that weird Star Fox game. Yeah. He alleges that a portion of his work on the game was unpaid, which I wouldn't be surprised. And see, that is the problem. Yeah, now I remember this game. It was like announced at the Game Awards, and obviously at a certain level, the Game Awards did not succeed as well as an advertisement because Sony is showing the trailers at CES also. Of course, maybe they just had always planned to do that. He was promised a long-term position at the company, but then he was subsequently turned down the position after the offer was lower than what he had expected.
Thanks to you, I can move forward.
So yeah, it seems like this guy, the way he's telling the story, got really screwed. And at a certain point, him making just general accusations is not his best move. He should take it to court and start a lawsuit. It's expensive and nobody really wants to start a lawsuit, but that's the only thing these days that really gives you any credibility. So if you have a case, you've got to sue him. You've got to at least start the lawsuit. That'll give you so much credibility. Even if you settle later on for like no money at all, you've got to back up your claims. Otherwise, it's just going to be a case of somebody whining because they were treated somewhat badly in the video game field where everybody was treated pretty badly. But I don't really disbelieve them. I bet there's a whole bunch of programmers and a whole bunch of just creative people and creators in the games world that are constantly getting screwed, constantly getting used, constantly getting abused. That seems incredibly believable to me. Do we want to do this? I think so.
Just follow my tune, and away we go.
Now the fight begins.
Just follow the tune of my magical pipe.
1, 2,
Found
3
your weakness.
in the turn. Moving on, TechCraft has an article. Fallout 76 Free States Militia banned from Facebook again. A roleplay group walking away from Facebook censorship and banning process. Apparently Fallout 76 Free States Militia is a role-playing group of friends who like to play games together. Unfortunately, it appears Facebook has mistakenly banned them for a second time. Who knows what's really happening in this Facebook group that might be getting it banned, but it very possibly, I think, might be just the title, like Free States and Militia. Those three key phrases are probably just getting caught up and getting banned on Facebook, which at a certain level, people want to see more of that. The pro-censorship people do want to see just more companies doing a very terrible job at filtering and censoring and or just doing a good job at censoring. And more, I think this is a great example for something like Discord, but I bet Discord would ban you too. It's
Is fighting and despair
it's really an argument more for Nextcloud talk, running servers on your own. Getting maybe a Raspberry Pi can handle Nextcloud talk, and running a Nextcloud server for you and a small group of friends, but that's a lot of your internet upload, which most people don't have. That's a lot of maintenance. That's a lot of IT knowledge people have to have. You could use Signal, certainly, for encrypted person-to-person messaging, but there's not really a great service out there that is something that's really, really secure and can't be seen by third parties, and easy to run. You can certainly go to places like Minds and Gab and Parler whenever Parler shows up again. Apparently it was a hacker that hacked Parler and saved everything from it before it got shut down. But yeah, there really aren't great options anywhere. At a certain point, it makes an argument for everybody to go back to 4chan, or go to 4chan for the first time, or one of the other chans out there. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. An Epic exclusive, The Division 2 used Steam community for LFG posts. Ubisoft support posted looking for group thread to Steam. The Division 2 isn't on Steam yet, but it does have an unlisted store page on the platform. Now it's been discovered that Ubisoft support made looking for group posts on the Steam community forums, a platform that doesn't have the game, showing kind of the glaring problem with the Epic Games Store is that because the Epic Games Store is being lazy and doesn't want to have forum posts and have any kind of like support for the games, which that's really was the selling point of the Epic Games Store is, hey, let's really screw over the consumer and not have forums, and not have support and not really have refunds, a unique refund policy. Now they've had to make their own, use some other websites forums, and in this case almost certainly Steam will be the better man and let that still happen, because the game is eventually coming to Steam. But honestly, if it was never coming to Steam, or if Steam wanted, Valve or Steam wanted to be jerks about it, they I think would be totally within their right to say, hey, you can't post in a forum yet for a game that does not exist on our platform. It could also have been a case that this was for beta testers playing it on Steam. Maybe, but they could try and make that argument. But I think definitely it was a case where they were trying to get Epic people playing on Epic to use the website resources of a competitor. But Valve doesn't want to look monopolistic. They want to be the libertarian company. So they're not going to pull some BS like that. They're going to just let Epic do its thing. And Epic is doing its thing. And it's not really succeeding because of it anyways. I wanted to mention this post from Activision support 22 hours ago. They were actively investigating issues of Black Ops Cold War, Warzone, and Modern Warfare 23 hours ago, and it's been restored 22 hours ago. What's interesting about this is I follow Activision support, and I never see a post from them. Like, December 18th, 2020 is an advertisement. December 18th, 2020 was another issue. December 16th. Like, maybe every now and then you get a problem with the Activision services. And Activision services are definitely not Twitch services, but it does certainly go to highlight how bad Twitch's support Twitter page is, in that it highlights all the problems that Twitch has, and it definitely highlights the fact that Twitch does have a lot of problems, and those are not being well addressed or taken care of. Like, Twitch is still very much a mess. Next story, TechRaptor has an article. A Nintendo Game & Watch modding videos have been DMCA'd, taken down by Nintendo. I'm not sure if it actually was DMCA'd or not. Why? Just because Nintendo's a jerk and they think that they're applying whatever laws they want to apply. Content ID claims for modding Game & Watch games, which are like so old and basically abandonware. Like, the original Game & Watch is being modded in no way is not fair use. That is ridiculous. But that's Nintendo, so you're really just saying the same story that we've heard dozens upon dozens of times before, where they have done the exact same thing. They try to shut down all competition and act monopolistic. Nintendo is the opposite of Valve in that way. Nintendo would love to have a monopoly over all video games, and imagine a world right now where every single video game that was on PC, every single video game that was not on the Switch was illegal and not allowed to exist. There would basically be no game or gaming market at that point. But that's what Nintendo would like. We would be so worse off for if there were no competition. Which, in a funny way, that kind of goes to show how, at least on a minimal level, competition does help in capitalism. But often, nowhere as much as you would like it to. There could definitely have been a lot more competition in the society if we implemented certain limitations on the size of corporations, and that would be very easy to do. To simply say Nintendo of Japan and Nintendo of America combined can only make $1 billion a year, then they would have to have employees go and start their own competing companies to try to make another $1 billion, because there couldn't be a connection between the two companies. Also, if you have a scenario where you yeah, we are having a slow internet time today, but I'm not dropping frames. It's Shadowverse that's having the trouble. But yeah, also, if you just limit the maximum a CEO at Nintendo can make, I imagine a lot of the Nintendo employees would make more money too. And that's something that we kind of did in the United States at some point. We eventually told Pacific Bell, the phone company, that they couldn't be so big, and we split them up into AT&T and Verizon. We just, at that point, stopped keeping an eye on AT&T and Verizon, so that they meet and secretly agreed to collude together still, and we've done absolutely nothing to force the ever-growing AT&T Verizon from the point that they were formed and created into, had we kept an eye on them and made them stay the size they were then, or forced them to split and break up even more, then we would have probably had 5 or 6 different phone companies, which would have left to 5 or 6 major uh, internet service providers when the internet came around, instead of really having only one option. And it definitely would have stopped crazy things like AT&T owning Warner Brothers movies and productions and DC Comics and all these vertical monopolies where maybe they don't have 50% ownership in one general category of business, but they definitely have more than 50% of business in many categories combined. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Alex Recode X and Tavern of Sins are now out for Nutaku. I don't feel like the Nutaku games tend to be that good, and Nutaku really is just like a publisher. Although, I do feel like Alex Recode is a name I may have heard for an adult game. So, yeah, they might be doing something a little bit different and trying for some better quality products and publishing more Japanese made products, whereas Nutaku games up until this point have been fairly light on having either Japanese visuals or being actually made by a Japanese company that's trying to sell to a Japanese market.
I surrender.
Alright, well, I guess what you want to do is that first. And then that. And then that. TechRaptor has an article here. Todd Howard teased the Indiana Jones game 3 months ago, in the sense that you have this decoration of the Ark and the Covenant and of the statue stole in Temple of Doom. Also, I would say this looks like the staff piece from Temple of Doom. This also looks like this might be a photo from this. This is Fallout. This is a C-3PO and R2-D2. Star Wars, and Bethesda and Todd Howard have not done any Star Wars game. Anyways, this is just a printer scanner all in one. He's got a signed football, which is probably something he really treasures, where the rest of this feels extremely staged. If you could actually read these books, you've got some jacks here. I don't know what this is. It looks kind of like a monkey skull or something. Here you have a star, and here you have a globe. And we don't know what's behind his head, of course. So, yeah. What is this? This seems to be a continuing thing that Microsoft is doing, where they are hiding things in the background of their streams to get people to always watch their streams and their announcements. But also that creates this problem of, are they giving up on the Elder Scrolls, or is the Elder Scrolls just getting more and more delayed? It seems like Todd Howard isn't even that good about making one game in a relatively good amount of time. Throwing in Indiana Jones game
Seems to be over.
is potentially a issue there. Also, I don't know where Todd Howard is in the structure of ZeniMax anyways, because if Bethesda Softworks announced an Indiana Jones game, but it's Machine Game, and Bethesda Softworks is a child company of ZeniMax, yeah, Todd Howard is going to be the executive producer, which maybe that's just a title for the Indiana Jones game. Yeah, that does create... That does create an interesting issue, certainly, as to who really is working on this game. Yeah. Because you have Bethesda Softworks, child company of ZeniMax, announcing that Microgun Games, which is, I guess, a development team under Bethesda Softworks and probably not actually an individual company, will be working on an original Indiana Jones in collaboration with Lucasfilm Games. Todd Howard will executive produce the title. So I guess the real question then comes down to what kind of games does Todd Howard want to play or see, and that will probably drastically affect. I'm winning here, even though it's going very slowly, so I'm going to just stick with the Portal Craft. Yep. That's going to drastically affect the way things go out. If you look at this like teaser image, maybe, very possibly, this is what the game looks like. It is just going to be really high resolution, painted, hand-drawn imagery in a point-and-click adventure. Which would be interesting, certainly, to see what a lot of funding and a lot of artistic skill would get you for a point-and-click adventure in 2021 or in modern days. Because the only thing we've seen are Neptunia games being about the best animated products we've seen, and they still have their own kind of unique art style, which makes them not really look hyper realistic. They look more cartoony, Looney Toony. Microsoft is launching a 2021 Council for Digital Good. I think this is a thing for good, for kids. 18th month engagement program for U.S. teens focused on understanding, recognizing, and reducing digital risks and promoting safer, healthier, and more respectful online interactions. Seems like, unless this is an online thing where they can get thousands upon thousands of people to be it, in it, it seems like you can only do this for a small select few of kids, and it's probably not going to accomplish much. It clearly is just a PR stunt more than anything else. Even if they do have a genuine idea that they want to they want to help kids create a better internet, a less hostile internet, you kind of need a like free YouTube series or something like that, or a free website for something like that that can always be accessed and can always be looked at by kids, not something you have to apply for. And we have seen in the past parts of Microsoft that are super SJWE, and thus it is very possible that whatever is being taught inside of that program is going to be some crazy SJW BS that most people wouldn't agree with. Or at least 50% of US residents wouldn't agree with. So yeah, maybe that's why it's being hidden behind application process and limited number of people. It kind of feels like what they're really doing is basically doing an internship. And I don't know if doing programs like that right now, when still in a pandemic, makes any sense. Kids are still struggling very much as far as remote learning or going back to school, and there's definitely a point of contention there that around the idea of doing anything extra.
Can you keep me company? Away from
Coming at you.
Let's take out this character.
Leave my sight. Love me a critter worth that salt.
we had a tweet here where it's gaming and monetization. Gaming is a popular topic for video games, for videos on YouTube. This page helps creators of gaming videos understand the various monetization statuses that can apply. These aren't new policies, but rather existing guidelines derived from the YouTube advertiser-friendly guideline content. So they've got like tips for monetizing gaming videos. Inappropriate languages. Here's some direct stuff. So, light profanities are not censored at all. As these. Strong profanities are censored for the F word, but not the S word or the B word. And then extreme profanities are here. Not sure I think each of these are on the same level, but they are close. Let's see. You can turn on ads for content where it's full censored or abbreviated profanities in the title, thumbnail, and video. So that they're probably making a great point to say title, thumbnail, and video there. They want strong profanities only after the first 30 seconds, which I guess is their argument for setting the tone. Whereas 30 seconds is a weird marking point too, because for a lot of streamers, myself included, you probably haven't said anything in the first 30 seconds at all. And then extreme profanities mean no ads at all. Okay. Fair enough. At least I know the rules there. You can turn on ads, but only brands who opt to run ads when there are profanities in the there are full profanities, not censored or abbreviated profanities in the title or thumbnail, including just partial censoring. Also, if strong profanities are used frequently throughout the video, such as the F word being used repeatedly throughout the entire video, or there are multiple uses of strong profanities in the first 30 seconds. Extreme profanities are not being mentioned at all when they choose to run ads. And then they're just saying you should just turn off ads for contents with extreme profanity, which at a certain point also there's some disingenuousness in this, because the things that the extreme profanities that are being mentioned here are also things that would get you community guideline strikes almost certainly, if you're not extremely careful and extremely lucky with it. So it's kind of ridiculous to even say this. Like, you really should say you should turn off ads for this content. It said this type of content is not allowed on YouTube at all. Extreme profanities and racial slurs used anywhere throughout the video. The more relevant to my content certainly is if I play an adult game or a game that has an adult scenes. You can turn on ads on for non-gratifying sexual topics, such as a plot about a visit to a gynecologist, regular romantic scenes such as affectionate kissing between characters, non-focal and non-arousing portrayal of limited clothing in appropriate settings such as a pool. That's a mouthful, certainly. So beach scenes are okay in visual novels, but it has to be non-focal, non-arousing, and almost every beach scene in a visual novel would be focal and arousing around the bikinis and such. So yeah, there's a catch-22 there. Non-sexual gratifying or incidental appearances of limited clothing. That's an interesting one because there's plenty of times, like Akiba's strip, for instance, incidental appearing of limited clothing happens because in the incident you tear the clothes off of them. There's plenty of times when clothes tear, rip, and you see a bit of cleavage or side booth, particularly in Japanese style games. I guess though what they're really saying is that that's the category for sexual suggestive, and you can turn on ads for sexually suggestive things in general, which I would assume. And then fully censored naked bodies where features are indiscernible, nudity is still acceptable. And see, this isn't really the case because The Witcher 3 would be kind of like a great example of a game that I feel like I could have shown all of the nudity scenes in The Witcher 3 that happened on occasions, even some of the nudity scenes where you actually were having sex, and nobody would have really been upset about that, and it probably would have been monetized back in the day when that was happening. But I guess that would have been also under old rules, and these are the new rules, so I guess I have to compare apples to apples. I think I messed up there. I shouldn't have played that. And then questionnaire options and details, romance or kissing, discuss the discussion of romance. I feel like this is guidance for discussing these topics if you were teaching this like this was a lesson being taught in a school. So I guess maybe what they mean here is you can discuss romance or kissing. You can discuss romantic relationships, sexuality without the reference to intercourse, which that's as nebulous as you can get. Moderately sexual suggestive content that may include limited clothing, non-graphic sex education, music videos that contain sexual content without nudity. Yeah, they're making a big exception here for music videos. You get partial ads for brands who want to do it if you show sex toys or similar pleasure enhancement products such as game items or appearances in the background, implied sex acts such as movements under blankets or sounds of sex acts such as moaning, descriptive sexual topic references in gameplay such as masturbation or describing a sexual topic based on a character or scene from a game, or highly sexualized titles such as 18 plus or adults only titles, which I guess that means for video games, and this was for video games in particular, you can play an adults only 18 plus game and get ads run on it. But they ideally want to see partially censored naked bodies where sexual body parts are still discernible, such as silhouettes, or depiction of sexual body parts such as reoccurring shots of minimally covered breast, or you can talk about it quite a bit. This is once again one of these instances where it should really just say, don't turn off ads for content, don't put this kind of content on YouTube, is what they really mean here. If you have visible sexual acts or sexual body fluids, game story that features sex-related entertainment such as strip clubs as part of the plot, even if it's a quick stop or task. That's some great ABS here, because like the Saboteur, you work out of a cabaret show. And yeah, that's some inconsistent thing. It feels like there are things you can run ads here that are way worse than saying, well, you work out of a strip club, particularly if you like are in the back room of a strip club and you never even see a stripper in the game. You can't depict or discuss fetishes at all, which that's some BS. You know, there's some fairly bland fetishes out there. So if somebody has like a foot fetish, a fingernail fetish, even liking like big butts and cannot lie about it, is a fetish. So I tried to make a joke there and failed miserably. Uh, so I guess you have to like big butts and lie about it. In this instance, according to YouTube. And that is so nebulous because everything can be a fetish, pretty much. Honestly, they need to go into more details here if they're trying to say specific fetishes. If it's scatological, urological, hardcore bondage, piercing, amputation fetish, maybe they don't like midget porn, gore, vor, like some of those more extreme ones, certainly I could see. But go into detail here. Don't just tell me fetishes, because there's a whole bunch of them. Explicit and vulgar titles, and I can't read half of this. Misleading metadata such as title promising sexual activity, even the video itself doesn't contain adult content. Interesting that's something that once again would get you in trouble with YouTube, and yet they're just saying you can do this, but you have to turn off ads. Here they have fully exposed sexual body parts such as visible genitals, which at a certain point the breasts need to be mentioned here. Like, you can run ads if it's minimally covered breasts, but breasts are sexual body parts, I guess, and they're not making any kind of depiction discerning here between genders. So I guess male breasts are just as unacceptable by these rules, and that we know that's not true. We know that would never be enforced that way. Male can be topless in so many videos, and I think a lot of females would probably argue that breasts aren't 100% sexual body parts either. See, so exposed breast, full nudity, animal mating is being thrown in there, or a video with thumbnails. It's kind of crazy to even be this lenient, as it seems like this indicates it for video games in particular, knowing how many thumbnails will probably come in front of the eyes of young kids playing with phones and watching YouTube. And then violence is the bigger issue, certainly for most gamers. Truth is, I kind of wouldn't believe them if they said violence was not completely allowed with ads running. You can turn on ads, but only when the app brands opt in, when there's edited video game emphasizing graphic violence or gore in the video, such as zooming or enhancing the moment of graphic violence. Let's see. But they're full if it's as part of unedited video gameplay. So that means, like in the sniper games, when the bullet zooms in and shows it, or in the Mortal Kombat games when you're doing a like fatality and it zooms in and focuses on the violence, that's still acceptable. This is like also supposed to be video game related, so like graphic law enforcement in educational context seems to be mentioned also as maybe getting you demonetized, which I guess that means bad cops in games. But you should turn off ads if the subject of the video is graphic violence, such as depictions of a graphic violence scene, such as extreme fatality moment, or compilation of graphic scenes such as a compilation of extreme kills, raw footage of violent law enforcement, graphic dead bodies, and a non-educational video. Some of this is definitely not video game related. Edited video game that's primarily focuses on graphic violence or domestic violence. Interesting, domestic violence is only really mentioned at the very end here. So yeah, then they're pretty lenient on the violence thing. There are definitely some video games out there where you can simulate yourself just torturing somebody. There are definitely torture scenes in a few Western games, and there definitely are some fetish Japanese adult games, or just fetish adult games in general, where you can be whipping and beating people. But I would totally understand if there was no ads allowed on those. Then we have controversial issues. Brief or fleeting references to any topic or events listed in the no ads column. I don't know what the no ads column is. There's no link to here. Usage of the word suicide in a video game context. Yeah, I've said that plenty of times. And I really have not looked at any of my videos as far as their monetization in a year and a half. But I really don't feel like any of them are getting demonetized. Either that or YouTube has just stopped emailing me when they are demonetized. I still, on a rare occasion, will get WB claiming a Batman game and Content ID claiming it. But as far as actual demonetization, it seems like I'm on the good boys list, personally. Fleeting or dramatized content around controversial topics such as suicide, sexual abuse, child abuse, and domestic abuse are allowed. But particularly in controversial issues, you cannot have ads on for anyone who opts to run on this, because apparently there are no brands at all that would opt to run ads on controversial issues, which inherently that is what we've been told, is that it is the brands that don't want to be associated with controversial issues. So that does make sense that it's not applicable in these cases. And then also, once again, you probably would get in trouble, not just no ads, if you go into long conversations here. Although arguably there, like, it gets dangerous if you want to make a channel that is highlighting like the horrors of child marriage, and you're trying to you're working for a organization trying to end child marriage, and you've got a YouTube channel. It kind of sucks that you may never be able to get ads, but I guess that's probably better than the opposite. Or if you want to make a channel about having an eating disorder, apparently you can't have ads. Or if you want to make a channel about anti-bullying, then you can't have ads. So yeah, there's some topics here that are probably a little bit extreme, but not super extreme, as far as just no ads always. And then they have sensitive events, which are passive mentions to sensitive events as one of many topics during gameplay. So you can't make a game and completely always be talking about 9/11. And if maybe somebody out there makes poor taste jokes constantly about 9/11, I definitely mentioned it. I'm literally just going through the list here to demonetize this video at some point. But you can have ads if they opt in for verbal mentions or visual portrayal of terrorist or drug trade organizations in a satirical way or educational way. But but you can't have ads on a game that would be a simulation of 9/11. Although, honestly, there probably would be a decent game out there where you're not the bad guys in 9/11, but you're like quantum leaping and going back and trying to stop the event. And that would be actually a very interesting telling of a story. We've seen plenty of artistic depictions, not of going back in time and stopping 9/11, but we've seen hundreds of depictions of going back in time and potentially saving Abraham Lincoln from being assassinated. Yes, there is probably 200 years difference in time there, but it's the same thought. And had these rules existed or been made back then at least a few Twilight Zone Outer Limits style stories would have not been able to have ads. And it's interesting to cover this article right now and for them to promote this article right now for gamers in particular, as we are in the middle of the push of many organizations, Google, Alphabet being one of them, to be more and more pro-censorship. Because at the core of this, that's what this is. It's censorship by economics, by a company to say, yes, we will let you have some of this content on a platform, but we won't let you make any money on it, so it won't be worth anybody's while. We're still going to punish you. And in all actuality, it's not really the scenario. Most of these scenarios do lead to you getting kicked off the platform completely if you make too many videos around this and get many community guideline strikes, which they have not mentioned community guideline strikes at all in this article, because they are trying to be deceptive here and make it feel like, oh, it's just your options we're giving you. You can do whatever you want. You're not really an employee of YouTube. We're not really setting the rules and telling you how much and what kind of content to make, when they totally are telling you exactly how much and what kind of content to make. They are making an emphasis here to say focus or focal versus fleeting. Then drawing circles around certain areas, using shocking images in the thumbnails, putting out bad titles. This gives you some small bits of information, but they're not really putting enough detail here. And you're always going to be able to make this. Like, when we get back to the profanities, there's thousands of different words here, but that are profanities, but they're listing 8. Like, so there definitely are some things here that I'm not sure as to whether it would be considered a light profanity or a strong profanity, or maybe even a strong profanity and extreme profanity, like particularly when you start getting into the more joke insults that a stand-up comic might use. I'm not sure if that would be between this or between that. The easiest one is gay, just G-A-Y. Is that a strong profanity, light profanity, or extreme profanity? I feel like a lot of the SJWs at YouTube probably would say it's an extreme profanity. But they're not listing it, so they don't have to really justify to say, oh, this is actually in this category versus this category. And see, that's the problem. If you're going to make a rule like this, you really need to give me a list of every single insult that exists, including ones that aren't even used normally in the English language, things that would have been extremely old, or only used in like Africa, even English-speaking African countries. I know there's a few words like that in other countries that Americans wouldn't even recognize our profanities, and you need to tell me, is that considered a profanity here or not? And do I have to avoid non-English profanities also? Because otherwise, I think a lot of people could probably curse in a second language pretty nicely. So, yeah. They don't want to give you specifics. They don't want to give you any kind of details that you can use to defend yourself. They just want to give you general guidelines to damn you with. This is a great example of where the court of law should be in play. And it's kind of a silly idea to put out there, but it may be our best bet as to protect free speech. If there was a literal group of rules or regulations or laws that either the FTC had of all the words you can say that are classified under one category versus another category, and all companies had to stick to the same groups of words per category. And it would be very nice if one could easily take YouTube to court and say, no, you unfairly demonetized my video and you've caused me actual financial damage, and you should pay me the losses plus a penalty for restricting free speech as a concept, not just the protected free speech that the Constitution shall not abridge. Which, of course, that's always part of the problem of people making the flippant and not well thought out argument that you want free speech. The Constitution only protects free speech from the government censoring you. It's like, that's not what the Constitution says at all. It says you shall not abridge free speech based on several categories. The Constitution literally says free speech exists ahead of the Constitution. Free speech is a higher law, higher concept, higher right than the Constitution itself. The Constitution, I'm sure, says this for a few other things too, that there are rights that exist just because they're human beings, not because the Constitution says they exist. But I don't want to get into a big rant to that. Let's wrap up today. We've got a game here called Aquarelli. I guess that's how you pronounce it. It's a weird asset flip game. It just kind of looks like a weird Russian game. It's got some interesting assets that have been flipped into it, but it doesn't feel like it makes any sense. It's a surreal adventure with parkour elements. It's $17.99, which is way too expensive, and surprising, not me at least, it's a Russian full audio game with English. Yeah, so that's not making it to the fall list. Here we have a game on Steam called Under Lock, which, I guess one thing to take out from that guidelines too is there was no point there that they really talked about like xenophobia or hating specific religions or people from certain countries or races so much, other than saying bad words. So I guess I'm in the clear for constantly and accurately pointing out that a large majority of the terrible games on Steam are made in the Chinese language and the Russian language, which can only lead to the assumption that they are being made by Russian and Chinese people. Either that or there is a country out there like the United States that is doing just a great job of gaslighting me to believe that the Chinese and Russian people are notorious for making bad video games and potentially money laundering with bad video games. That's what I assume is going on. This is just a horror game. Early access requires VR, $9.99, English, Russian, Chinese. Yeah, nothing here of quality. It's only the game developers, though, that can list the languages of a game. It's not like somebody else can tag a game to have some other language. Here we have a Gamma Sutra article. The Dolphin Entertainment has acquired the esports and game PR agency B/HI. I don't know who Dolphin Entertainment is. I know the Dolphin emulator exists, but that's Bender Helper Impact has worked for esports companies including Rovio, Nexion, Konami, Survivors, Shell Games. I've heard these names, Super League and Team Liquid. So, alright, more esports movements. Although, with the pandemic, we certainly haven't seen much about esports this year, and we probably won't see any more much about esports for a long time. Here we have a game on Steam called Square 2, which looks like a low effort black and white game. It's $1.69 English only, 25 achievements. This is the kind of game we can just blame English speaking people, maybe Americans, probably Americans for this one. So it's not always Chinese and Russian, it's just very often. Here we have a Gamma Sutra article. Scopely taps former Facebook exec as its new CMO. I don't even know what a CMO is. Chief Medical Officer? No. Marketing Officer. Yeah, he's got to be Chief Marketing Officer. Okay. It's a little too inside baseball for me. Here we have a game on Steam called Yaga that looks very nicely polished. It's a top-down, like twin stick beat 'em up game from the looks of it. Hack and slash, where you're fighting Baba Yaga related monsters. Which that is an interesting concept in its first place because I don't know much about the Baba Yaga myth, and that changes the type of characters you have and makes it look way different compared to just using your standard token-esque elves and golems and orcs. You might actually be working with Baba Yaga to kill other monsters. Yeah, this is $14.99 English full audio, and then support for a bunch of other languages. Like pretty much all the European languages, which would make sense. And then they're also throwing in some Asian languages too. I'm going to put this on the follow list. I think there's a good chance that this actually works. And then it seems to have some roguelike elements that might let you go through multiple runs or improve your skills. Of course, you could also run into a problem with a game like this where you are just fighting the same people over and over again, and it's only entertaining for a brief amount of time, and then it gets very boring. But that's where the reviews come in. Tiercrafter has put out several of its other awards. So for best writing, they give we may have already covered this actually. Yeah, we already covered this. They gave it to Hades as the winner, which I can't really argue with any of that. Here we have a game on Steam called Republica Gamers Citadel 15. I bet this isn't a game as much as this is a, well, it's a game, I guess. It's an advertisement because Republica Gamers is a hardware seller. Yeah, it's free. A free advertisement, English and Chinese. full audio in English. Yeah. It's not in VR. Required to install the Republic of Gamers Control Center Armory Crate to enable in-game lighting. Yeah, this is really just a demo game that they put out for free. And the fact that CES has happened and this is the only one of these shows that this as a concept has not been embraced, or they really haven't done anything with it. Which I'm more than happy with that. I think the idea of putting advertisements as games or interactive demos, which really that's all this is a bad idea. The last thing I want to see is Steam flooded with even more garbage software, particularly when something like that is going to not be relevant very, very quickly. Like 6 months from now, there's no reason for that game to exist on Steam. Here we have a game called Psycho Cat the Door, which looks like a crazy combination of things. I initially would have the impulse to just dismiss this, but I'll be a little careful and put it on the fall list instead. It's $4.99, English, French, German, Russian, because it is possible, unlikely, but possible, that this is something of interest. No, on second thought, seeing some actual gameplay here, I'm not interested in this. It just feels like way too much craziness for the gameplay is being shown. And they had best visual design at TechRaptor. So Rydo's choice, Ghost of Tsushima. Cyberpunk is third place. Ghost of Tsushima they give second place to, and then they give it to Hades. And see, this might explain very much why so many of the announcements and Game of the Years have been delayed this year, is because everybody's giving everything to Hades, because that was pretty much the only game. They have best soundtrack also. Rydo's choice, Final Fantasy VII. Third place they give to Doom. Second place they give to Hades. So it's not a clean sweep for Hades. And then they give the winner to Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I bet the music is probably better in Final Fantasy VII Remake than Hades. And that's probably not really a disparaging comment on Hades music. Gamatsu has an article here. Dead Cells DLC Fatal Falls launches January 26th. I guess as long as Dead Cells is still making DLC, then I have an excuse not to play that game. And just wait for a I could wait for a ultimate version with all the DLC. ZeniMax, which is owned by Microsoft, has some job listings. And seemingly they have a 3D artist that they're looking for at Machine Guns games, so they're trying to scale up here. 3D artist does kind of mean that the Indiana Jones game is going to be in 3D and not a flat 2D. Audio programmers, assistant producers, build engineers. I bet this just got greenlit, this whole Indiana Jones game, and then they immediately announced it. Like, I bet it's been less than 6 weeks. Level designers, monetization, and live designers for machine games is questionable. Like, are there going to be microtransactions in an Indiana Jones game? That would really suck. Producers, QA, they're looking for basically everything. they have no team. Like there's literally no team here, and they just announced all these job listings. So if I was to guess, Todd Howard negotiated the rights to make an Indiana Jones game. And now Microsoft is being forced to make a game that maybe they weren't even thinking about making. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called The Purge Man, which is just an asset flip, low polygon, first-person shooter, player versus player game, mostly negative, so already people don't like it. It's VR, it's $2.99, it's way too cheap for a VR game, English only. It's kind of a great example of a game that is questionable too, as far as YouTube guidelines. Like, apparently, from what I had just read and from my understanding of it, even a game like this that is just super glorifying shooting people in the street and decapitating them in violence and gore, I think this is still monetizable. Like, I'd like to at least hear YouTube's argument that it isn't, because there's plenty of GTA clones out there and GTA games out there that is pretty much just this also. And yet, I think YouTube might have a problem with a game like that if it became really busy. Let's see, Gematsu has the same article here with a 30-second teaser video. But apparently the teaser trailer has been taken down since then. There probably are some hidden secrets in what was shown in the teaser trailer as to where they think they're going, but I also wouldn't be surprised if some of those secrets don't actually get integrated into the final product. And I also wouldn't be surprised if the Indiana Jones game is not released for 4 to 6 years from now, like way past the next movie. Either that or it's rushed for the next movie and it's not that good. So take your pick on which one you would rather see. TechRaptor has an article here. 7 lost digital games that need a re-release, like Scott Pilgrim. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Like there is a good argument there that re-releasing the old fighting games instead of making new Marvel Capcom fighting games. I think Marvel probably it would be the holdback there. They'd want the new characters to be in new outfits instead of the old outfits, and then that would ruin the fun of it. The Simpsons arcade game, I think, was re-released fairly recently, so I mean, it would make sense to remake the whole game and make it basically a sequel to it. But then you'd also have to improve the game and make it good. Driver San Francisco is a fairly recent game, relatively speaking, but okay. Infinity Blade is a game that was just abandoned, and PT is a joke. Twitch Sings was taken down. I don't think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Reshelled was good. In a funny way, this list really points out the fact that most of the good games have already been remade. And they stretched it here. They got a list of 5 games that really don't matter, I think, to me. And then the Simpsons arcade game could use a remake, and I wouldn't be upset with Marvel vs. Capcom fighting games coming out. But honestly, if they were going to remaster Marvel vs. Capcom 1 or 2, they should have done it during the Infinity Wars movies several years ago to tie in with the hype around the Infinity Wars movies. But because they didn't do that, it would be kind of silly to do that now, because that's not where the Marvel movie cinematic universe is focused. Here we have a game called InBody. This is from Sock Pop Collective that tends to flood Steam with several games at once. let's see, they've got a bundle now up to $164. This one is $2.99, which is way too expensive. These are all very low effort, simple games. Nothing more needs to be said there, other than the fact that I think it is worth mentioning. I don't think there are any other games that he's listed, so maybe he's trying to break up his releases a little bit more, but he's still overcharging and trying to manipulate the bundle system, which is pretty crazy. TechRaptor has an article, Kitsune Tales delivers love and mythology in 2022. Which, okay. This looks like it might be an interesting throwback of a game. Kind of a... It's from the creators of Super Bernie World and 2064 Read-Only Memories. Super Bernie World, if I recall correctly, was a Super Mario Bros. Game with Bernie Sanders. This definitely feels like a Super Mario World clone. But that doesn't really mean it's a bad idea. If you can make a good new Super Mario game, Super Mario World game, make a good new Super Mario World game, particularly if you're not Nintendo. But often they aren't that good. That's the problem. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Oculus Quest 2 players make up nearly half of Rec Room's 1 million VR using monthly access units. I don't know what MAU stands for. Yeah, it'd be helpful if they told me what MAU stood for. Monthly accounts. But I guess that's an indication that the Oculus Quest 2 is being fairly well adopted compared to the more expensive Oculuses and VR headsets, because the Quest 2 I think is relatively cheap at like $400 or $500. It would be my guess as what it cost. And that really isn't saying much, because making up nearly half of what could be 1,000 users is way different than making up nearly half of 1 million users. TechRaptor has an article, Valve's Steam storefront saw big gains in 2020. Which, okay, that makes sense. They increased their demo activations quite a lot. So by pushing demos, we saw more demo activations. They got a whole bunch of sales and things, which definitely makes sense. People stuck at home would want to buy more digital games instead of going to the store. And I just think Steam is always going to be able to manipulate these data to show that they have done better than before. 25 exabytes of were delivered. Exabytes being, I believe, below petabytes. I think 1,024 or 1,000 terabytes. I'm not sure how it even breaks down nowadays. I think 1,000 terabytes equals 1 petabyte, and 1,000 petabytes equals 1 exabyte. No. Alright, well, they break it down. That's 26,424. 26,424,115 terabytes. Or 27 billion gigabytes. So yeah, exabytes are basically 1,000 petabytes. I'd be very happy if they started selling petabyte hard drives, but that'd be fairly crazy. So yeah, I mentioned this earlier. OpenCritic retweeted this guy. He's joining the team at OpenCritic as the anchor of OpenCritic Weekly Recap podcast. So they're starting to have a recap podcast. which OpenCritic more and more is trying to be more like Giant Bomb and reviewing games themselves, and less just being this open source platform where they collaborate and connect everybody else's reviews. Which at a certain level they're just trying to serve two masters, and it's going to fail miserably because they're going to drop focus on something eventually. TechRaptor has the best evolving game, which Reader's choice was No Man's Sky, then Stardew Valley for third place, No Man's Sky for second place, and Among Us. I feel like TechRaptor just retweeted a lot of things they had already given the art. They'd already written articles around, so maybe TechRaptor just doesn't have anything to say this week. Here we have a game on Steam called Scaleboy Refactored. This is a very interesting kind of Paper Mario cardboard cutout game where I guess you're swapping out body parts on top of that unique artist, and it's an isometric top-down twin stick shooter. It seems to shift perspectives every now and then. This could be a cause of a game that would cause motion sickness, or just be really frustrating because you don't have the camera in the right place very often. But it also looks like a unique idea and effort. $17.99 is a little expensive. English, German, and Spanish is not a combination of languages you see very often. But I'm going to put this on the follow list. This would be one of these games that if it did make it to the wish list, though, I would demand a major sell there below $9.99. TechRaptor also had the best expansion DLC, and they gave the Reader's Choice to No Man's Sky Origins, third place to Ghost of Tsushima Legends, second place to Stardew Valley 1.5, and then the winner to No Man's Sky Origins. I kind of would like to play No Man's Sky if you could tell me there's a really abridged version of that game that could be played, but I don't think there is. I think it is going to be fairly grindy and fairly loopy, kind of like Minecraft. Like if I was told about Minecraft right now in 2021, I'd say, okay, well, if you let me just play an abridged version so I can defeat the Ender Dragon and that's the end of the game, I would be happy with that. But that is totally not the real experience of Minecraft. Like, you don't even have to get on the path of killing the Ender Dragon in Minecraft to have fun and do a lot of different things. But also, if you told me you should get into Minecraft because you're going to end up spending hundreds of hours playing it, and it's just going to be always a backup game that you'll go back to every now and then, that's a very daunting thought, certainly in a world where I have thousands of games on Steam that I want to play. Moving on, we have a game called Lunar Base Camp 2030 Plus, which this looks like it's just a low effort simulation games. They're calling it a strategy education game. It's just not visually polished enough. $19.99 English full audio. That's going to be a no for me. I have two more tabs. OpenCritic has an article here. The Medium will feature ray tracing and deep learning super sampling. Okay, cool. Yeah, you almost expect that. I also feel like the Medium was delayed recently, so it kind of feels like in that case the Medium may have been delayed to improve its visuals. And then finally, Gamma Sutra has an article. Lucasfilm Games taps Ubisoft Massive to create a new open world Star Wars title. So, okay, there's going to be a new Star Wars title. I think it is also probably worth mentioning that some people are saying because there are now Star Wars games coming out by other people than EA, that has ended some kind of exclusivity that EA had, which, in all fairness, there was a de facto exclusivity with EA, but I don't think there was ever a contractual exclusivity with EA, or if it was contractual, I'm sure that Star Wars, Lucasfilms, and now Disney could have gotten out of it. Does that really change anything? No, because the truth of the matter is, if you hand the EA license over to a dozen developers, you more than likely are going to create a scenario where where 11 out of 12 of those games are bad, and the Star Wars franchise in particular needs a lot of oversight and a lot of love and care. Otherwise, you are going to have a bad experience with it. And Disney has already let it turn from, there were 3 prequel movies that most Star Wars fans didn't like, and then 3 original movies that Star Wars fans liked, and now they've turned it into, there are 5, maybe 6 movies, Star Wars movies people don't like, and maybe 4, probably 3 Star Wars movie people's like. So there's a more mainline Star Wars movies that are disliked than liked, and you really can't let that keep on happening. YouTube Creators is announcing an inaugural YouTube Black Voices class, 112 creators who share their perspectives through inspirational storytelling and fostering incredible communities. Stay tuned for lessons you can learn from them in the coming days. So YouTube Creators is just going to promote a whole mini series that they've created themselves. Apparently, according to the ESA, there are 192 video game companies locations inside of Texas, including Activision Blizzard, EA, Gearbox, NCSoft West, Nvidia, 6 Foot. I don't even know who 6 Foot is. Although it's also probably worth mentioning that like Activision Blizzard and EA probably have offices in multiple locations. Texas is big. It is a big landmass without unions and strong union laws. So it's no big surprise that that there was that they would want to have some offices in Texas. Low taxes in Texas also. But I don't know if that inherently means that if you wanted to be in a video game company, you would do well moving to Texas. I don't know if there's any good place that you should move. Redmond, Washington is still probably your best bet if you want to work in a video game company, because being near Microsoft or working for Microsoft puts you in a good place. Also, it gives you the opportunity to get out of the video game world and go work for Microsoft or some other support company that is in Redmond, Washington, that are around programming. Gamasutra has a blog here. I'll post that over 8 million demos were played during the 2020 Steam Festival, and other nifty game Steam stats. If you're interested in that, check out that Gamasutra article. Yeah. I'm going down my Twitter feed. There is no new Humble Bundles. Cyberpunk 2077 is focusing on bug fixes and free DLC throughout 2021, according to TechRaptor. Take-Two has officially ended its pursuit of Codemasters after following the EA offer. Gamatsu has the same article. Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red talks commitment to quality. PS5 and Xbox Series versions launching in the second half of 2021. I'm skipping a lot of these articles that I could launch and show off because I'm trying to just rush here, and some of this is not really that important stuff. Here we have an article I do want to look at because I don't know these companies. Neptunia Virtual Stars launches March 2nd in North America and March 5th in Europe and March 29th in PC. We'll talk about that too. So we can show off Neptunia Virtual Stars. We went a little long because I went through all those rules. Yep, that's all the new news. So here we have Gamma Sutra. Tilting Point signs a $10 million publishing deal with South Korean developer Story Taco. And this seems like this is some kind of game around some anime boys. Free-to-play publisher Tilting Point. The cash will be spent on the user acquisition for Story Taco's dating simulator Dangerous Fellows. Well, okay, those look like Dangerous Fellows. As Tilting Point attempts to make the title a success in the West. Beyond that, the company will also manage App Store optimization, ad monetization, marketing, creatives, platform relations, porting assistance, and potential future IP integration. What's interesting around this is I've often talked about the lewd waifu game Destiny Child that I'm still playing and having a decent amount of fun with on my phone as one of like maybe 3 games that I actually play on my phone. And the whole concept of that is it's a gacha game around getting anime girls. There's a few guys that show up too, but it is definitely more focused on anime girls that are in high fashion anime clothing that are very tight fitting, and sometimes you get maybe a bit of cleavage, but it doesn't go particularly extreme here. And Destiny Child is made by Shift Up, a company which is a South Korean company. So if Story Taco is going to do the same thing with guys, that might be an interesting game for me to check out and try and compare and contrast the two. There will be slightly less interest there. I don't think they can convince me to want to own potentially hundreds upon hundreds of anime boys characters, but it's going to just kind of depict on each and every individual character design. A great contrast to that, here we have the Gamatsu article, Neptunia Virtual Stars, launching on these days, March 29th for PC. It's a music-based hack and slash game, but when you look at the Neptunia girls here, like her and her don't strike me as being particularly different, and their all black outfits are not amazingly interesting. It is worth mentioning that the Neptunia characters are supposed to represent game companies and game consoles, so this character here is supposed to represent Xbox, and thus that's why it's all black and you have the X's in the hair. This very well is supposed to represent a Wii. They may still be fairly behind. This might be a PlayStation 5 in white, but then this might be a PlayStation 4 in black. So yeah, it would help somewhat to know where they are. with the consoles, and there are definitely some characters that are supposed to represent companies, Japanese game companies, more than consoles. And here is, I believe, Neptunia, who is the main character. And there's a whole series of these games, but then there's some weirdness around the Neptunia games in that they just constantly get remade and re-released. So the RPG mainline games, I think there's really only 3 of them, where this is more of a, I guess, on the beat rhythm shooter game, which might be a little hard for me to play. And they introduced these like fairy forms, so there's a lot of backstory certainly to these series of games. And I definitely do own some of the Neptunia games. I don't know if I own the right ones that I would actually want to play, but I'm trying to make a pattern, make a collection of games to cover in the right order. Anyways, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.